My stepsister stood up during her wedding reception, pointed at me in front of everyone, and laughed. "This is my stepsister Emily," she said loudly. "She's just a nurse." People around the table chuckled. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just smiled. But then the groom's father suddenly stopped eating and stared directly at me. And a few seconds later, he said something that made the entire table go completely silent. "Wait, aren't you the nurse who saved my life? My name is Emily. I'm 34 years old, and I've worked as a nurse for almost 10 years. Hospitals teach you how to stay calm in uncomfortable situations. You deal with emergencies, panic, and families going through the worst moments of their lives. After a while, you learn how to control your emotions no matter what's happening around you." But standing in the middle of my stepsister Lily's wedding reception while people quietly laughed at me, that still hurt. The reception hall was beautiful. Golden lights hung from the ceiling, and white flowers covered every table. A live band played soft music near the dance floor, while waiters walked around with trays of champagne. Everything about the night looked expensive, and that made perfect sense, because Lily had always loved attention. She stood in the center of the room in her bright white wedding dress, smiling as guests surrounded her. Meanwhile, I stayed near the entrance for a moment, holding a small gift box. I had chosen a simple navy dress. Nothing flashy, nothing expensive. Honestly, I wasn't expecting anyone to notice me. That had pretty much been the story of my life growing up with Lily. After my father passed away, my mom remarried Lily's father. From the outside, it looked like we became one big family overnight. But inside the house, things were never that simple. Lily grew up with private schools, luxury vacations, and designer clothes. Meanwhile, I worked part-time jobs through college just to pay for tuition. While she was flying to Europe during school breaks, I was working night shifts at a diner. Eventually, I became a nurse, and I loved my job. Helping people during their worst moments gives your life a kind of meaning that money can't buy. Lily never understood that. To her, success meant money, status, and appearances. And tonight, her wedding had all three. About 20 minutes after I arrived, dinner service started. Guests slowly returned to their seats while the room filled with quiet conversations. Then suddenly, clink, clink, Lily tapped her glass with a spoon. "Everyone," she said happily, "I want to introduce someone to Mark's family." Then she turned and pointed directly at me. "Emily, come here for a second." Dozens of eyes turned toward me. I already knew that smile on Lily's face. It was the same smile she used growing up right before embarrassing someone. Still, refusing would only make things awkward. So I stood up and walked toward the main table while guests watched. When I reached her, Lily placed a hand on my shoulder like we were the closest sisters in the world. Then she laughed. "This is my stepsister Emily," she told the groom's family. "She's just a nurse." A few guests chuckled politely. I felt the familiar wave of embarrassment in my chest, but I kept my face calm. I simply smiled. That's when the groom's father suddenly stopped eating and began staring directly at me like he had just remembered something important. For a moment, the table went strangely quiet. Not completely silent, but quieter than before. The kind of quiet where people pretend to keep eating, but you can feel their attention shifting. The groom's father kept looking at me, not in a rude way, more like someone trying to pull a memory out of the back of their mind. Mark noticed it too. "Dad?" he asked. "Everything okay?" The older man nodded slowly, but his eyes were still on me. "Yes, I'm fine," he said, but he didn't look convinced. Meanwhile, Lily didn't notice anything unusual. She was still smiling proudly, enjoying the attention she had created. "To be fair," she joked, lifting her glass, "Emily spends most of her life inside hospitals." A few people laughed again. This time the laughter sounded more awkward. I simply kept my polite smile. Over the years, I had learned something important about Lily. Reacting only made things worse. The groom's father suddenly set his fork down and leaned back in his chair. He looked at me carefully again. "I'm sorry," he said politely. "Have we met before?" The question caught me off guard. I shook my head slightly. "I'm not sure," I replied. "I meet a lot of people through work." That answer was honest. As a nurse, I had seen thousands of patients over the years. Faces came and went. Moments blurred together. The older man slowly nodded. That makes sense, he said quietly. But something about his expression told me he was still thinking. Like the answer was right there, just out of reach. Across the table, Lily rolled her eyes playfully. Oh, please. She laughed. Emily isn't secretly famous. Some guests smiled politely, but no one really laughed this time. The groom's father ignored the joke. Instead, he leaned slightly toward Mark. Son, he said quietly. What did you say her name was again? Mark looked confused but answered. Emily. The older man repeated the name slowly. Emily. He rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Then he looked at me again. This time there was something different in his eyes. Recognition. I feel like I saw you during a very important moment in my life, he said slowly. That sentence made my curiosity spike. Important moment? I tried to search my memory, but nothing came to mind. Before anyone could ask another question, the band suddenly started playing a louder song. Guests nearby clapped. Several people stood up and walked toward the dance floor. Lily immediately grabbed Mark's hand. Perfect, she said cheerfully. Time to dance. Within minutes, most of the room shifted toward music and laughter, but the groom's father stayed seated for a moment longer. Still thinking, still staring at me like a puzzle he was determined to solve. Finally, he stood up and said quietly, I'm certain of one thing. He paused. We've definitely met somewhere important. Then he walked toward the dance floor. I couldn't stop wondering what memory he was trying so hard to remember.